Hello and welcome everyone to Magma Rages episode 36. With me, I'm joined by Pandemonia,
Hello.
and we're going to be here discussing all the BlizzCon news. BlizzCon happened over this weekend, which is why this episode's coming out a little bit earlier. We're here and we're going to discuss all the new hype from BlizzCon. The big announcement at BlizzCon, of course, was the announcement of the new expansion. We all were pretty much expecting that, but we were a little bit wrong on the theme of the expansion. This expansion is actually going to be called Kobolds and Catacombs. We got a little bit debated with the treasure references and Marin the Fox into thinking it had something to do with pirates, but in fact, the treasures that you can find in this expansion are located deep underground and protected by kobolds with candles on their heads.
Yep.
And speaking of treasure, Marin is going to be available to all players that just log in from this week, I believe.
Yeah, this coming Monday. They're
Yeah,
releasing it a bit early as like a hype thing.
yeah. So just by logging in, you're going to actually have access to Marin, and that's to use right now. You don't have to wait for the expansion. Much like we kind of had with Volcanosaur beforehand.
Yeah.
It's everyone's going to have access to Marin, and obviously those with the BlizzCon virtual tickets or those that went to BlizzCon will have access to the Golden Marin the Fox.
Ooh.
Which yeah feels like a little bit of a slap in the face for those people when everyone now just has the card anyway. But
Yeah.
that's another story. So yeah, I mean it's cool to see them giving us extra or kind of free content to hype people up. Um, we can quickly talk about Marin, I suppose, now that we've kind of introduced him.
Yep.
Marin is an 8 mana 6/6 legendary with Battlecry. Summon a 0/8 treasure chest for your opponent. And if you break it open, you get awesome loot. So the treasure chest is called Master Chest. It's a 3 mana 0/8. Not that its mana cost matters too much, but it does matter if your opponent is Shaman and they want to evolve it. That's not nice for you. Um, yeah, so, okay, giving your opponent a 0/8 treasure chest that you have to actually destroy in order to get the treasures. These need to be some pretty good treasures, right? For you to give up 8 damage, essentially. And the treasures are Toland's Goblet, 3 mana, draw a card, fill your hand with copies of it. Wondrous Wand, which is 3 mana as well, draw 3 cards, reduce their costs to 0, which sounds pretty insane. Zarog's Crown, which is a 3 mana spell as well. Discover a legendary minion, summon 2 copies of it. And the Golden Kobold, which is a 3 mana 6/6 with Taunt and Battle Cry. Replace your hand with legendary minions. So much like the Golden Monkey, except the effect only happens on your hand rather than on your deck as well. So, Pandemonia, what do you think of Marin?
So, I mean, you probably know what I'm going to say, but like the thing is, Marin is the kind of card I want to like, and I want to, I would like to see playing in good competitive decks. But like the problem is that if you play this on turn 8 and you can kill the chest immediately, it means you have board presence and you're probably winning already.
Yeah.
So you don't need Marin. The problem is if you just playing it, you're giving your opponent the chest and you don't kill it at the same turn, then I mean you brought up evolve. But for me, the generic answer is basically Bone Mare.
Mm-hmm.
And nearly every a lot of decks run Bone Mare right now, and your opponent going Bone Mare on a 0/8, making the 4/12.
Yep.
It doesn't sound fun.
Yeah, all of a sudden when you're giving your opponent a 4/12, it feels a lot worse, and I'm not sure the treasure itself is going to be enough to carry you at that point.
And the thing
Uh,
with the treasures I think are, I mean, I think three of the four are quite powerful, potentially quite powerful. I think Toland's Goblet is more of a meme, like a meme spell. It's a case of, you're going to see some hilarious Trollden videos with it, I think. But
yeah.
I don't, like, the problem is obviously because you're drawing a random card, I don't think it's going to be that strong.
Yeah, I mean, there's not many cards that just combo with playing a lot of copies of themselves, right? You
Yeah.
you have cards like Mind Blast, obviously. I mean, you
Yeah.
can Toland's Goblet and then play 3 Mind Blast for 15 damage,
Yeah.
and then still have a bunch more Mind Blasts. But,
Yeah.
like, really, that's not a reliable way to win, obviously, as you're not going to have any control over what you're drawing. And probably the best card I can think of to draw with Toland's Goblet is Jade Idol, simply
Yeah.
because at that later point in the game, really what you're going to be doing is you're going to be just drawing or being able to play a bunch of Jades, which at that point, let's say they're going to be 5 5 6 6s at least, when you can almost guarantee that you only have Jade Idols in your deck, and Toland's Goblet is going to bring you a bunch of Jade on the board, as well as maybe allow you to shuffle in some more if you want as well. And in that case,
Yeah.
Toland's Goblet is really pretty good. But, giving
Pretty
your
random
opponent,
effects.
yeah, giving your opponent a 3 mana 0/8 as a druid doesn't feel particularly good, especially if you're playing something like Jade Druid. So I think, the treasure seems good in that case, but I'm not sure the card would ever see play in that. But yeah, speaking about the other treasures, you think they're a lot better? Wondrous Wand,
I
drawing
think
three
Wondrous.
cards and reducing their cost to zero. Now that sounds pretty nuts. I mean,
That's nuts. Yeah.
almost any card reduced to zero is pretty
It's
good,
good.
and
Yeah.
drawing 3 cards for 3 mana is very powerful as well. So, I think that's a really powerful combination that you'd be happy with in almost every deck. Even
Yeah.
aggro decks would be happy with that simply because it's drawing you 3 cards, and that,
Yeah.
and are not going to be worrying too much about running out of resources.
And you can play them immediately. The
Yeah.
fact there's a, I mean, obviously, once again, I can already see the memes coming with, people getting ultimate infestation. like, I can already see, or you get Kun, or you get some really big nasty
Yeah.
guy with this. But yeah, and then the other two, the main issue, it's random legendaries, and unfortunately now we're reaching a point where there are already quite a lot of legendaries, and there are quite a lot of weak, understated ones or ones with battle cries. So, I mean, all the princes.
Yeah,
I mean,
Marin himself.
Baron
That's
himself,
like
yeah,
a 6/6 is really not what you're hoping to get out of Zarog's crown.
yeah.
I think you're not too happy if you get that.
Well, you're still
So
happier than than getting, discovering when your choices are like, patches,
yeah, or Nat Pagel and
Warpath, or exactly.
Lawwalker Cho and Millhouse Manastorm. Yeah, all of those things. I mean, what kind of stats do you probably need to be getting at least 6/6 in stats, right? We don't have things like Rag. Rag would have been a nuts
Yeah, so
result for
in
this.
Wild, potentially.
Yeah, in Wild
Uh,
maybe.
I mean, to be honest, getting two Marins is not the worst. Getting two 6/6s for 3 mana is still, is kind of okay. I mean, anything less than I think 5/5s, you're but not happy. You're not too happy about.
Yeah, because I mean, one of
Uh,
the big things obviously is that you're not getting battle cries out of them as well.
yeah,
So
you
none of
just
the
want big stats.
Yeah, so you just need big stats or like end of turn effects. Something that's obviously nuts is like 2 Lich Kings or 2 Ysseras. Those are your most
Yeah.
ridiculous scenarios, kind of thing, right?
Or even like me, I love my value. For me, getting
Yeah,
something like Can would be quite good as well. I'm not sad but you get a bit sad if you get patch. Like you get a really low roll. But yeah,
yeah,
so we'll see. But like I say, it's obviously it's a fun card. I think people are probably going to try it out. Because it's the first new card, people are going to try it out
yep,
next week. I mean, you're going to see pros try it out. And I mean, I can tell you now, it's almost probably going to go into a lot of the Riser into the Highlander decks, right?
yeah, yeah.
Uh, not that it's going to be good, but it's really amusing.
Yeah, I mean, drawing 3 cards for 3 mana in those Razakis Priest decks is really good. Never mind the
Yeah.
fact that they also get reduced to zero then.
It's gonna be, oh god, like losing to Zerikos villain.
Yeah. One last thought. Master Chest is a good counter for Nzoth decks. Because once you kill the chest, if they play Nzoth, they'll give you back another Master Chest.
Yeah.
But otherwise,
Yeah.
overall, I don't think Marin's going to be particularly great. But we're going to get hands-on experience with it this week. So we'll, all be able to find out and see. And the other really exciting news before we get to the remaining cards that are going to be released, or the cards that have been spoiled already, is the dungeon run feature. So, we spoke about the treasures being buried deep underground, and traditionally in the Warcraft universe, in World of Warcraft in particular, you've had to battle bosses in dungeons in order to get your loot, and that's kind of where Hearthstone's going with this expansion. So what this means is the dungeon run is a new type of single player content, which is kind of similar to an adventure, except that you don't actually have to bring your own cards into the deck into the dungeon. You start off with a base base deck for each class, and then you battle bosses that increase in their difficulty up to a maximum of 9 bosses. And for every boss you defeat, you get some rewards. You get passive cards, you get treasures, and you get just some extra cards for your deck. So The
So just to
passive,
clarify, those rewards are only for the deck that run. You don't actually, like
yes.
Blizzard have said, you're not actually getting any like card rewards or any, extra out of the get, out of the, out
Yes,
of
yes,
the
yes.
mode get
Yeah,
rewards.
it's just for the deck that you're using for this run.
Run. Yeah.
Yeah. When it comes to rewards for that affect your collection or whatnot for the run, we'll get to that. But for now, so you build this deck with all these rewards you get. The passive cards are cards that just give you a bonus for your whole run. So they're things like giving all your creatures +1/+1. The treasures are just really really powerful cards, like stealing 3 cards from your opponent. They from their hand. That is, they're just very very powerful. Like imagine some of the cards you see sometimes in that bosses play in adventures, or
Yep.
if you're playing tavern brawls. Those are kind of the power level that you see in these treasures. And then the cards are usually just I think it's 4 cards every time.
They're going to be grouped together by themes, though.
Yeah, 4 cards grouped together by theme, uh, that will tell you that will kind of lead you in a direction for your deck. So it could be something like pirates, or it could be secret themed, or it could be various different kinds of themes based on the class. Which if you can pick up the cards of the similar themes, then you're going to be kind of having a more well-built deck, hopefully. Sorry, it's actually 3 cards, not 4. Every time
Yeah,
you get
and they
off
all
it.
follow some sort of theme. So, like for example, the ones that can't be spoiled. There's a mage one where it's the choice is defense, fire, or giant army, and then depending on which one you pick, you get different options. Like defense gives you 3 cards supposedly related to defense. The fire is 3 cards vaguely related to fire, and obviously, so on.
Yeah, yeah, they are definitely thematic. There's also like, yeah, is the secret ones for mage kind of like supposed to be in the
Uh,
defense realm?
I don't know. Like there's the
Okay.
only thing that are available are screenshots that have been taken from some people who've played that.
Yeah, and that's what we're gonna
So
have a look at now. So if we look at these screenshots, if you're watching the video, we have kind of the standard adventure kind of looking screen here, where you pick your adventure, which it will just be under kobolds and catacomb as a dungeon run. And then you have kind of the base deck that you start off with. For the first boss, you don't even get to see your deck. You just play the first boss, and then kind of figure out the cards that are in your deck after that. But after the first run, you get to see your deck before you have to pick your rewards, and then you move on to the next boss. So after you defeat a boss, you'll be able to pick rewards. So here we see the treasures, these passives, which in this case, Glyph of Warding makes enemy minions cost 1 more. The captured flag gives your minions +1/+1, and Mysterious Tome allows you to start the game with 3 random secrets. And you can see your deck on the right here, starting off with 12 cards and then growing as you build it. So you get your treasures, then you get your loot as well, which is thematic. I believe there's more than like 3 themes, for instance.
yeah,
So
there's
like
quite a
there's
lot of
also a
themes.
secrets theme. Yeah, so there's a bunch of different themes. So it's not like you'll always get offered the same theme. So you can't like always pick defense or always pick fire, for instance.
Yeah,
There'll be lots of different themes for the classes that will help you build your deck. So yeah, you get offered the 3 cards to
and the
build
main
with.
the
Here we
whole
can see they get a different tier as well, like unique, arcane, frost, some other alternative things.
and the whole theme is like the dungeon crawling, and like Bird said in the announcement, it's going back to the whole old school Dungeons and Dragons kind of dungeon crawling.
Yeah,
So he even kind of jokingly called it a roguelite, within the game,
yeah, yeah.
which
Because
is
when you lose, if you lose to any of the bosses, that's your run ended, and the
yeah,
goal is to win 9 encounters in a row in order to complete the run with that class. And once you complete the run with all of the classes,
you get
you
a
get
card
a
back.
special card back, which is very much like, let's say, the heroic modes
Yeah,
in the
pretty
previous
much.
adventures, right? It's like completing it, you get a card back, which is pretty cool. It's a pity there aren't really any other kind of rewards. I think that's the one other thing that sticks out to me. It's not too late for them to change that, though. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, yeah, I would have really liked some other kind of rewards. Even if it was like 100 gold for completing a run. It's 9 games. That's equivalent, let's say, to probably playing. Uh,
An arena.
well, yeah, I was thinking about just getting a bunch of ranked wins or a bunch of play mode wins, right? Where you actually just
Yeah,
get the 10 gold. Or what is it, 10 gold? Man, I don't even remember. How much gold do you
it's
get
10 gold every 3 wins.
for every 3 wins? And you can do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can do that in
you
30
can win
times
30 game
for, yeah, for 100. Okay, so
or
it's
for
not really
100 gold.
equivalent to that, I suppose. It's much easier than doing 30 wins, but yeah.
Yeah, they may be worried about if you do things like that, people kind of just abuse it a bit. But then it's good in the way that people are playing it. I mean, they're boasting that it's the most replayable single player content, and that
Yeah.
all the bosses are constantly randomized and things.
Yeah, so I mean, they've spoken, or basically the pool of bosses is quite large. I think they said something like 48 or something.
And then
Um,
there's like the traps. The traps. There's supposedly a traps one which is very difficult.
yeah, a room of traps. So here we have some examples of some of the bosses. Black Steed, which has a hero power that is 0 mana, transform a minion into a random one that costs 1 more. So just evolving a minion basically, which is pretty powerful for 0 mana. Then there's Giant Rat, which just has a hero power that costs 2 mana and summons 2/1/1 rats. So that's kind of one of the entry level bosses. Then you have Elder Brandalmar, hero power dampen magic for 2 mana, put a counterspell secret into the battlefield, which seems pretty good against certain deck types, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Waxmanster Sturmy, which is hero power creates a wax clones of minions on the field that are 1/1 copies. I think it's targeted, if I remember correctly from watching BlizzCon, but I'm not entirely sure. Then there's Room of Traps. This is the one you were kind of talking about, which is apparently one of the hardest encounters due to the difficulty. It also has a lower chance to show up. I'm not entirely sure what happens in the Room of Traps, though, as I haven't actually seen that at all.
Yeah.
And then there's Battlecry Jinzo, whose hero power is a passive which makes Battlecries trigger twice, so giving him basically the Bran ability. And then there's Frostfur, which is a hero power that freezes a minion for 2 mana. So probably not the scariest. And then there was a bunch as well that we saw in the during the Hearthstone Invitational when the teams played through the dungeons, like Cracks and a bunch of others. So I mean, we'll probably find out more, but I imagine we're only really going to find out about all the bosses when it actually comes time for the release, and we get to actually get some hands-on time with the dungeon runs. Uh, and then yeah, I mean, there's lots of different, or there's a few more passive abilities, and or I mean the passives that you can get, and a few more different treasures as well. So I think we'll speak about those a little bit more once we know the full extent of them. Maybe give some people advice for their early dungeon runs once the expansion actually releases.
Yeah.
But for now, overall, I'm pretty excited for the dungeon run feature. I think it's really cool that they're doing something new and innovative rather than just, let's say, normal more adventures. And uh, my only concern is that from what I saw of it being played, it looked really easy, but that was only the 3 bosses, the showcase version that they had at BlizzCon, the first 3 bosses. So I imagine with 9 bosses, the difficulty could ramp up quite a bit. But I'm hoping it does kind of take quite a few tries to get to 9 wins. Traditionally, I kind of like the games that are a little bit grindy in that sense, like Diablo, when you're having to grind through like your Inferno levels, those kind of things. So I'm hoping that it does kind of prove actually an interesting challenge rather than kind of a face roll, which is what it can sometimes feel like playing against the AI.
Yeah. That's really so. And the nice thing is, I don't know if we mentioned, basically it's completely free.
Yeah,
You don't need a collection, nothing. So
yeah, you don't have to pay anything for it. There's no entry fee. So yeah, it's completely free, which
yeah,
is pretty cool. Um, what are your thoughts on it overall? Your last
I'm
thoughts
really
on the
looking
mode?
for it. I'm really looking forward to it. So we'll see. I'm quite hyped. I'm always excited for new cards, new stuff. Uh, I mean, like you said, the new mode is really, really exciting. It also changes up. It's a bit of a break from ranked or arena even. Gives you
Yeah.
something different. I mean, when you're bored one day, you don't feel like ranked. You can just play it. And because it's obviously against AI, you don't have to worry about roping or anything like that. I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so that's a really cool new feature, but I'm sure what most people want to hear about is the new cards, and there have been a bunch of new cards revealed, mostly during the panel. Some were revealed on the first intro that they had for the expansion. We've already spoken about Marin the Fox. But the next set of kind of interesting legendary cards is going to be legendary weapons for every single class, including those classes that have not traditionally had weapons. So your priests and mages, etc. Or your spellcaster type classes. Most of these are going to be, I think all of these are 0/3, or at least for the spellcaster ones they
No,
said.
they said that some of them will attack.
Okay,
Like,
so the spellcaster ones are the ones that are all 0 attack, I believe, though.
yeah,
That's what they
probably
said.
from what it sounds like, like so. This is all speculation, but the classes that traditionally have weapons,
Yeah.
I think, will still probably have weapons that can that will have attack values. Whereas, I think the classes that don't traditionally have weapons, I think their weapons are more likely to have 0 attack and just be utility weapons. Like basically almost be
Yes.
enchantments more than actually be weapons.
Yeah. So yeah, it is kind of a way of doing adding enchantments, and let's kind of give everyone an example. So Dragon Soul is the first one that they revealed. This is a priest weapon. It's 3 mana, it's a 0/3, and it reads, after you cast 3 spells in a turn, summon a 5/5 dragon. So that's a pretty powerful effect. It gives priests something early to do in the game, but it is very passive if you're playing it on turn 3, which is a little bit of a concern. But if you can follow it up with a turn where you can play 3 spells, getting that 5/5 dragon on turn 4 even is pretty powerful. And priest does have access to a lot of cheap spells, a lot of cheap 1 mana cost spells, as well as even 0 mana cost spells.
It's
So
possible.
it is possible, especially with something like a um,
Lyra.
well, I was thinking Radiant Elemental. So you go Radiant Elemental on 2 into Dragon Soul on 3, and then you can cast like Power Word Shields and other 1 mana cost spells.
Shadow. I mean, if you can ever get sort of the dream of like double radiant elemental, with constant glyph. I mean, not glyphs, shadow visions.
Yeah. Yeah,
Each
you
turn.
can summon a board full of dragons.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's quite interesting. I mean, it's really early to say whether these cards are going to be viable or not. But well, what do
Just
you
in a
think of
bubble.
this kind of priest weapon? How do you think it would fare now?
It's a card. It's the kind of card that you definitely, if you want to play it, you're gonna have to build your deck around it. It's not just a good all-round card you can just put into any deck. It's definitely a build-around card.
Yeah, I think the one quite interesting thing is in a deck like Razakis Priest, where you're actually often looking to play many cards on a turn to activate the Void Form hero power, it synergizes really well with that. But the fact is, honestly, if you're kind of activating that Void Form hero power a lot of times in a turn, you're probably just winning from that, and you might not need the dragons. The dragons are kind of like a little bit win more in that situation. So,
Yeah.
some kind of deck that's built similarly to kind of proc the Dragon Soul often would be good, but obviously the big concern with Dragon Soul is that they do have to be spells. You can't do it with like cheap cycling minions like Novice
Yeah.
Engineer, which is so good in your Razakis Priests.
Yeah. So we'll have to see about that card. And then
Yeah,
the next card.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna just talk about the next weapon that we know of,
The
which
weapon.
is Aluneth, which is a mage weapon. And it is a 6 mana 0/3, and it reads, at the end of your turn, draw 3 cards. So this doesn't require anything to activate it, it just costs 6 mana. But, it's kind of like a Manatide Totem on steroids, basically, if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's a really powerful effect, drawing 3 cards, but it is delayed. So let's say the first turn you play it, you're not actually getting those 3 cards until the end of the turn. So you kind of just wasted 6 mana that turn.
Yeah, but you spend 6 minutes to do basically nothing.
Yeah. You will get at least 3 cards. And if we look at this as 6 mana, draw 3 cards, do you think that's worth it?
I don't know. It's tough to evaluate. I mean, in a potentially very slow mage control, like control mage, maybe.
But
But I mean,
I'm
the
saying
problem,
if you just assume it's going to die the next turn to weapon removal. Worst case scenario, right?
does
We're
Cabanas
evaluating
2
the
not do
floor
something
here.
similar,
Yeah, exactly.
essentially?
Yeah, but I think this is better than Cavalier's Tome in a way because you're getting cards from your deck, which
Yeah,
is
that's true.
often better. Not always, but often. Um, but
I don't know.
I mean,
I like the value aspect, but the
so
problem also is if you're playing this in let's say a slower control deck. I mean, how many turns do you actually want this to keep going off? Because eventually, you might not be able to play. Like if you play in a slow deck with expensive, with flame strikes and blizzards, eventually you're gonna run
Syndragosas.
where you just can't spend, you can't
Yeah.
play out your hand. So it's all good. You want to draw 3 cards, but then what about 6 cards? What about
Yeah.
9 cards?
And
What
and
about
the other concern is durability actually worse for it then? Like, would it be better with lower durability on the weapon, right? Because
yeah?
you can attack with it, can't you?
I'm not
To
sure.
remove
I'm not sure
charges?
how they're doing it in hard. Like so far, if it's similar to the way they do it with minions, you
No.
can't.
Yeah.
And that's like a big, like, for example, in Magic, you can still attack with a 0 attack minion, whereas in Hearthstone,
Yeah.
you don't even actually have
The
the option.
choice. Yeah.
So we'll
But
see what they do with the weapons.
if you can attack with zero cost weapons, then that helps LNF. But otherwise, it's
Yeah.
really difficult to remove it yourself if you need to remove it.
So
You
eventually
know,
your opponent just leaves it.
yeah, your opponent could just leave it and try and fatigue you if they think they can outlast all your resources. So maybe for some kind of tempo mage as a top end,
Yeah, but
where
okay,
drawing
but
the
the problem
cards
is,
out could actually just give you a win condition with burn or something like that. Like
the
I'm not
problem
actually sure
is,
LNF really finds its way into a control mage.
the problem though also is, like if you play this in tempo deck, playing this on turn 6 and doing nothing. That's not exactly the
No,
most amazing tempo play.
it's definitely not, but it's one of those things. So
Like
what
reload.
tempo decks very often do is they have a turn where they don't tempo, which is meant
Yeah.
to capitalize on previous tempo plays, right? So
Yeah.
if you're tempoing and you're ahead on the board, this is the way you capitalize on being ahead on the board. Before you give your opponent a chance to come back on the board and you just
Yeah.
run out of resources, you play something like LNF and that
That
refreshes
bridges the
your
gap.
resources, and then all of a sudden now you're in you can be in control for the rest of the game.
Maybe. Maybe. I mean, that's possible. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, like, in a bubble, it seems like, drawing 3 cards, 6 minutes, it seems decent. And the fact that if they don't kill it immediately, you've got a, infinite value, basically.
Yeah, but as you said, you need to actually be able to use those cards. If all the cards in your deck are quite expensive in some kind of control deck, it could be very difficult to not overdraw yourself and just start fatiguing yourself. So yeah,
Exactly.
that is definitely the interesting downside of LNF and something that I'm definitely gonna enjoy watching.
Yeah.
Like when you watch somebody have 2 mana-tide totems and somebody leaves them on the board in like a
Yeah,
competitive
eventually
match.
you reach a point where you're like, okay, don't kill them, and then
Yeah.
then your opponent is frantically trying to find a way of killing their own Minotaurs.
Yeah. So uh, these weapons overall, do you think they're going to increase the prevalence of cards like Harrison Jones if they're actually playable? I mean, we don't have a way to counter Death Knights per se, but these, new legendaries for every class, kind of in the Death Knight slash quest kind of position, right? That every class
Yeah,
is getting. Um, do you
I
think
definitely think.
that Harrison Jones, Gluttonous Ooze, these
Yeah,
kind of
all
things are going to
those
be
are
more
gonna
popular?
start. I mean, definitely. I mean, acidic swamp. I mean, the thing is now we've actually got quite a good variety of weapon removal. Acidic swamp ooze is probably the best weapon removal for more aggressive tempo decks because it's a 2 mana
Yep.
3/2. Gluttonous ooze and Harrison are both better for slower decks. Gluttonous ooze obviously because it helps you keep alive.
Yeah,
And
not so much against these cards though,
oh yeah,
because
because
in these
yeah,
case they have 0 attack. So
yeah, so it just destroys them. But whereas Harrison obviously gets you that value of drawing the 3 cards.
yeah, so I think let's say our rule of thumb for your tempo aggro decks, your acidic swamp ooze is going to be your answer to these weapons.
Yeah,
For your value decks or for your defensive control decks, I think you're maybe more going to run your gluttonous oozes because they maybe not against these cards they necessarily do the best, but
every other weapon.
against all the other weapons they're pretty good, and maybe against the other class weapons that actually do have attack they'll be
Yeah,
pretty
that might be quite
impactful.
strong as well.
And the gluttonous oozes also, um, if you're trying to fatigue your opponent in
Yeah,
terms of you don't want to draw too many cards in let's say a control mirror, or I imagine most of these weapons are likely going to see play in control decks, so let's say in control mirrors. Then you might not want the fact that you're drawing Harrison, but for a lot of
yeah,
other control decks, mid-range decks, Harrison might be the answer of choice as well. So yeah, it is going to be quite interesting. It's a lot easier to kind of hate on these weapons than it is on like quests,
yeah,
for
exactly.
example. So yeah.
So it's an interesting direction they've gone to give all class. So I mean, honestly, even if we haven't seen the rest of the weapons, I can already probably make a reasonable prediction that after these comes out, it will probably be safe to put at least one weapon removal card in nearly all your decks.
Yeah, certainly in the early stages of the
in the early
expansion,
stages,
people
it
are
will
going to be
be.
testing this.
I mean, it might even be correct to put in 2,
Yeah.
but I mean, one is going to be a given for a while, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so now moving on to non-weapon class or weapon cards. The one interesting thing to note, I don't know if we mentioned it, that everyone will be getting one random legendary weapon like they did with the Death Knights
But
for
but
free.
as from what we've
Yeah,
seen, it doesn't look like you're gonna have to do anything else besides log in within the probably the first week of it being released.
yeah, yeah. So that's pretty cool as well.
Yeah, that's pretty cool as well.
Okay, and then moving on to the rest of the cards. One of the other
Well,
cards, one of the other first. Is there another weapon that I missed?
no, well, there's
No.
another. It's just sort of a cycle that they've introduced. So, like, I think maybe we do that. Like, so they introduced the spell stone. They've
Oh, okay,
introduced the
right.
cycle of cards. Like, it's a new, interesting kind of a mechanic, but not really. Oh, we want to talk about the mechanic,
Yeah,
recruit.
okay. So, well, no, we can talk about the recruit mechanic afterwards. Anyway, so the spell stones, now that you've brought them up, so let's just look at the Lesser Jasper Spellstone, which is a druid card, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's 1 mana, deal 2 damage to a minion, and it reads gain 3 armor to upgrade. So the way the spellstones work is when you fulfill the requirements of the spellstones, do they have to be in your hand when you do fulfill the
No,
requirements,
no,
or is
no,
it
no.
just when they're in the deck as well?
No, I think it's in your hand. But some of the clarifications are so if we look at we look at the druid one,
Yeah.
it says gain 3 armor to upgrade. So even if you just hero power for the first 3 turns, it counts towards it.
Yeah. So
Like
then
it
when you
passes
draw
towards it.
this card, or sorry, does it have to be in your hand? I missed
I
that
think it
part.
has to be in your hand. But what
Oh,
I'm saying
okay.
is you don't have to gain all 3 armor immediately.
Yes, yes. You can gain it over time.
But the thing is, let's say you gain 5 armor in a turn. It only completes the first upgrade.
Yeah.
It doesn't count towards
Yeah.
progress on the second
So
upgrade.
if you played Feral Rage, let's say, in Wild, and you gained 8 armor, you would only get for the first one. You wouldn't get
Yeah,
the
and
first
then you
two
would get the second
completed.
one. So it goes from lesser Jasper to greater Jasper.
Yeah. So basically, when you gain 3 armor, the Lesser Jasper Spellstone becomes Jasper Spellstone, which is still a 1 mana spell, but now it deals 4 damage to a minion. And then when you gain another 3 armor, it deals 6 damage to a minion for still 1 mana. So basically, they're kind of scaling in a way,
Yeah,
which is quite interesting. I mean, obviously, the 1 mana deal 4 damage is a ridiculously powerful effect. I
I
mean,
think this card is going to be good.
1 mana deal 2 damage is pretty good alone. And then, if you're going into the later game, you can keep it. And honestly, Druid has quite a lot of ways to gain armor right now. We're talking Earthen Scales, the Malfurion. Malfurion is a great way to do it. It only requires 2 hero
Actually,
powers with this. So that's, Malfurion is absolutely great with this Lesser Jasper Spellstone. So I must say the Jasper Spellstone looking really powerful for a Spellstone.
yeah. I think basically any deck besides basically your aggressive token druids will want this card. Any mid range or like much like Jade Druid for a
Mm.
while. Jade Druids, I'm almost very sure will want to play 2 copies of this card.
Yeah, and when it gets to dealing 6 damage to a minion, that's doing
It's
something that has been a big problem for druids for a long time.
Yeah.
Solid single target removal. And that's really important. I think, this is almost the kind of card that we could also see like your Gadgets and Jade Druids coming back for a while as
Yeah,
well.
because I mean
Because it
this
works
gadget's
so well with
yeah.
Auctioneer.
And I mean I don't know. I mean I don't know in a world. I mean just naturally arming up. I mean naturally by hero powering or with the what's it
Malfurion.
with Morphurian. But I'm not sure if you'll ever want to maybe start playing cards like Claw, or
Yeah,
Bite.
I mean,
I don't know if those cards become viable now.
no, I'm not sure, but like if you're playing Earthen Scales in a Gadgets and Jade Druid list, you can
Yeah,
play like this Gadgets, the Earthen Scales. You can even probably play Innovate, because all of a sudden now you've got a lot of cheap spells that can activate your Gadgets and to draw through your
that's
deck.
true. Yeah.
So I think
Uh,
that could be really, really powerful.
yeah.
Okay, and then the other spellstone that we have is a Shaman
The
one, I
Shaman
think.
one. Now
Um,
this is an interesting one because currently, there's no, Shaman. The only real competitive Shaman deck is the token Shaman, the Evolved Shaman, and
yeah.
almost I can tell you now, you don't want this in your token Shaman.
No, so
But
This is the lesser Sapphire Spellstone, or at least the first part is.
Yeah.
Obviously, all of these cards pretty much go lesser, normal version, and greater. That's so. Let's just call this the Sapphire Spellstone. So the first version, 7 mana for the spell, and it reads: summon one copy of a friendly minion. Overload 3 mana crystals to upgrade. So you need to I think overloading mana crystals is arguably easier than drawing or than gaining armor, but the problem is you need to put a lot of overload cards in your deck, and I'm not
Yeah.
sure. But anyway, so let's look at how it upgrades. So it upgrades into Sapphire Spellstone, which is summon 2 copies of a friendly minion. Okay for 7 mana, I'm not sold yet. And the Greater Sapphire Spellstone is just summoning 3 copies of a friendly minion. So for me, the big thing is this costs 7 mana. Now we talked about how great the Jasper one was simply because it cost 1 mana. There was so much you could do with it. And this, I'm not really sure
Yeah.
about it. 7 mana?
I mean, this is kind of obviously this is Blizzard trying to push an overload type shaman, right?
Which is
Where you start
going to be a control shaman, right? I mean,
where
what's the craziest example for this? Like Earth
Snow Fury
Elemental.
Jar.
Well, Earth
Uh, uh,
Elemental.
well,
Because Earth Elemental naturally fits in your Overload deck. Snow Fury Giant as well, because you can probably play it in that turn if you've overloaded enough. You can play it and actually copy it that same turn, which is obviously the advantage of that. It looks like we've lost Pandemonia for a bit, but yeah, I mean, the big issue with the Sapphire Spellstone is simply whether you're actually going to be able to copy anything that is of enough value. I think one big problem as well with copying things like Snow Fury Giant is that it doesn't really have taunt. And if you're spending 7 mana on your turn, you hopefully want to at least have taunt. That's why something like Earth Elemental might well be one of the best. You know, in the best case scenario where you can actually copy something that has um, taunt and you can actually kind of survive, then it might well work out. But I suppose the best case scenario is something that has like ancestral spirit on it, and that'll gets resummoned when it dies with the death rattle. So yeah. I'm not so sold on lesser on the Sapphire Spellstone, but we can see, as Pandemonia was mentioned, there's kind of a rotation here, or a cycle, as it's often called in other card games, of these Spellstones. So we're going to be getting a Spellstone for every class. It looks like they're all going to probably be in rares, and hopefully the rest are not going to cost 7 mana, because this lesser the Sapphire Spellstone is definitely a lot more underwhelming than the Jasper one. So yeah, we'll be getting Pandemonia back in a sec once his computer launches up again. But moving on, the next card we're going to discuss is Crushing Walls. So Crushing Walls is a 7 mana epic hunter spell, and it reads: destroy your opponent's left and rightmost minions. So definitely looks like something that's trying to push control hunter again. But it does seem quite powerful in the sense that you're paying 7 mana to destroy 2 minions, and it makes people play in a very different way to how they've played traditionally. Uh, because all of a sudden positioning is entirely different. Um, but yeah, I'm not really sold. Like, I think you can position around this quite well. Obviously, it's counter to the way you position around something like Explosive Shot, but Crushing Walls is quite expensive for its mana cost, and I'm not sure 7 mana to destroy 2 minions is necessarily going to be good enough. But I think the biggest problem for me is that they're trying to push Control Hunter with this archetype, and we're going to have to wait and see whether Control Hunter is in any way really going to be viable, because that's really going to depend on the rest of the cards. We've seen it fail utterly miserably in previous sets, as the Control Hunter archetype doesn't really gel as well with the classic Hunter cards and the hero power. So yeah, Crushing Walls, not that greater looking card, to be honest. But the scary thing for me is that it looks like they're trying to push Control Hunter, and that's not something that particularly excites me. So next we have one of the new mechanics that Panamanian was talking about before he left, and that's Recruit. So much like when you're raiding dungeons, you want to have a party with you. Well, Recruit is a mechanic that's going to help you get some allies to help you in your quest to just defeat your opponents. Uh, so Recruit pulls a minion from your deck and puts it onto the battlefield. That's the general case, at least. Sometimes it'll specifically say where it's recruiting from. So in this case, we have Gather Your Party. It's a warrior spell, a rare, and it is 6 mana recruit a minion. So all this does is it recruits a minion from your deck, pulls it, and puts it onto the battlefield. So this kind of gives us it reminds us of, let's say, something like Shadow Essence, the priest spell that gives you a 5/5 copy of a minion from your deck. So it kind of screams like big warrior, which could well be something that's possible in Control Warrior Shell. Maybe something like Big Warrior could be used for Gather Your Party, but otherwise, if you can't guarantee that you're actually getting a minion that's worth 6 mana at least, then all of a sudden Gather Your Party becomes a pretty underwhelming effect. So we're gonna have to wait and see. I'm not particularly sold on Gather Your Party right now. I think the recruit mechanic is quite interesting, but we'll see the different kind of ways that it's going to be used other than to gather your party. So if we look at another use of the recruit card, the recruit mechanic, we have the Guild Recruiter. This is a 5 mana, 2/4, and it reads Battle Cry, recruit a minion that costs 4 or less. So now this is a more specific recruit. It's bringing a minion that costs 4 or less from your deck onto the battlefield, which is pretty powerful. Um, the question is, how good will it actually be? And if we look at the actual 4 mana cost minions in standard, we can kind of see that there's a lot that, let's say, not that great to get. Your cards like Arcanosmith, Arathi Weaponsmith, Ancient Mage, but none of those are really cards you're likely to see in your decks, to be honest. So Guild Recruiter is obviously a neutral. You could get some pretty powerful effects from it though, but the big concern is that a lot of good cards that have like Battlecry that are quite popular in the 4 slot at the moment, cards like Corpse Taker, are not going to be an option. Because they require their battle cry in order to really have power. So uh, it's difficult to see exactly what you would want to combo it with. Frame Reef Faceless is obviously one ridiculous example. Getting a 4 mana 7/7. If you could build a Aggressive Shaman deck that had Guild Recruiters and only, or let's say one Guild Recruiter and only Flame with Faces in it in the 4 slot, because you could play something like Jade Lightning as a spell and other cards like that, then all of a sudden we could see Flame with Faces returning. Genzo the Shark's also pretty good if you bring it out, because its effect is really powerful, especially for aggressive decks. And even something like Grimy Gadgeteer, maybe not too bad because it has that end of turn effect. But anything that has really the battle cry effects, which is cards that are being quite popular in the 4 slot, are not going to be as powerful. Corcoran Elite's pretty good because you're getting charge. Lakari Fellhound pretty good as well because you get to avoid the bad battle cry and you get really good stats for the minion. So there's definitely some synergy we could see with this. I actually think this could lead to some quite interesting deck building, and I think it's a much more interesting way to use Recruit, in that it is kind of um, leaning you to build your deck a certain way. The big problem is that it's minions that cost 4 or less. So let's say that dream that I was talking about of having it guaranteed bring you out a Flame with Faceless is not really going to happen because Flame with Faceless will not be the only minion in your deck that costs 4 or less, because if you're playing in any kind of aggro deck, you definitely want to have earlier drops. So maybe for something like Evolve Shaman, that's somewhere that Guild Recruiter could work. It's kind of like a Bonds kind of effect. If you play Guild Recruiter and Evolve, as that could be quite powerful. And once Doppelgangster rotates out of Standard, which it will next year after the Hearthstone World Championships, then Guild Recruiter could all of a sudden start seeing play maybe as a replacement for the Doppelgangster. So yeah, Guild Recruiter could be quite interesting. The other interesting thing is it does bring the minion out of your deck, meaning that the rest of your draws will be higher value for the rest of the game, which is an important thing to note as well. So I kind of like the new mechanic. Guild Recruiter is, I think, a more interesting take on the mechanic than gather your party. But gather your party, obviously, the great thematic explanation of recruit, and that's why they kind of wanted to show it off first. So yeah, that's the new recruit mechanic. There are some other kind of new mechanics, which is the elixirs. But before we get onto that, let's talk about the new hunter secret. So Wandering Monster is the new hunter secret. It's 2 mana, as are all hunter secrets, and it reads: when an enemy attacks your hero, summon a 3-cost minion as the new target. So what this means is when your hero is attacked, you get a 3-cost minion. So instead of getting something like Bear Trap after your hero is attacked, you're now replacing that target with a random 3-cost minion. So the big question here is, how good are 3-cost minions? At the moment, they're not the greatest in the world, but if this is coming down on, let's say, turn 2, you've got likely a 2-drop attacking into your a 3-drop, then your minion might actually survive, and that'll be pretty powerful. So I think Wandering Monster could actually be a pretty good secret. Um, Whether it's better than playing Freezing Trap most of the time is debatable, but sometimes there's obviously the big upside of it actually leaving you with a minion on the board. Uh, the big question is how good are 3-cost minions on average? Um there's no like in Wild, there's like Deathlord, which is probably one of the biggest high rolls for something like this. There's also, let's say, some of the 3-cost minions that have something like Lifesteal. There's the Priest one, that would be pretty good. Uh, Acolyte of Pain is kind of a bit of a low roll. Llama Bots are really low roll. Your Amgam Rage is pretty bad. Magma Rage is pretty good, actually. Hype for Magma Rager. Because it's obviously going to likely kill whatever attacks into it. Fell Guard, another real high roll. Frothing Berserker, not too bad. There's actually quite a lot of really good ones. Half Fiend could be a really hilarious low roll a lot of the time. Heraldia Frost Rider, pretty good. The Humongous Razor Leaf is a pretty good roll as well because it'll survive. Unfortunately, though, it's unlikely you're gonna actually ever be able to activate it to attack in a hunter deck. Um, but yeah, it is an interesting card. I mean, Mukla is also another really high roll. Uh, Morose a pretty low roll for the 1/1. So I mean, there's actually quite a lot of interesting cards that could come out. On average we're looking at 3 or 4 attack, and that's gonna destroy most minions. So that's actually pretty good. You're just gonna be hoping not to get one of these low rolls. Scarlet Crusader would be really good as well because the Divine Shield means it's gonna survive. So these are the kind of things you're gonna have to worry about, and players are definitely gonna have to learn how to play around this. Wandering Monster secret as everyone gets used to the new Kobolds and Catacombs expansion. So Wandering Monster, I think it's pretty interesting. Um, it definitely looks like it could be a lot of fun as a secret, and I think it could be quite powerful. It's definitely gonna be one of those secrets we need to, or one of those cards we need to actually play with a bit to test to figure out if a 3-cost minion really does work out to be better or worse on average. Okay, and then we have the Carnivorous Cube. Carnivorous Cube is a 5 mana 4/6 epic minion, and it's neutral, and it reads Battle Cry, destroy a friendly minion, Death Rattle, summon 2 copies of it. So obviously the one thing that screams at us is that this goes well in an N'Zoth deck, because N'Zoth will obviously be bringing you back a minion that's going to now be resummoning 2 minions, although I'm actually not sure if that will work properly. But it seems like we have Pandemonia back. Hello?
Yeah.
Hello. Okay, so I've just been going through some cards without you, because you disappeared on me.
Yeah.
But
My laptop blue screened.
yeah, so we're just going through Carnivorous Cube at the moment. The 5 mana 4/6 that has Battlecry, destroy a friendly
Yes.
minion, Death Rattle, summon 2 copies of it. The one nice thing is you can destroy a minion that's on low health to basically get it back on full health when the Carnivorous Cube dies. The
Yeah.
one thing I wasn't sure of is with N'Zoth effects, if it'll still bring you back that minion in the future. If you know what I
That's
mean?
interesting. Well, I don't know. It's something to, it would work probably the same as with Moat Lurker, right? Like if it works with Moat
Yeah,
Lurker,
yeah.
then
Doesn't Zoth work with Moat like that?
I'm not
I don't
sure.
think so.
That's yeah, I'm
Does
not
it?
sure. I just tried this. There's a Reddit thread. Moat Lurker does not resummon the minion it destroyed when Moat Lurker is summoned by N'Zoth.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
So I'm
So
assuming
if
that it won't
Carnivorous Cube
basically.
doesn't do that, then it's not quite as high roll potential in those kind of effects. But like how good
Yeah.
is eating one of your own minions? You're losing a lot of
Oh,
tempo on the board.
it's very situational most of the times. I mean, a 5 mana 4/6 is a reasonable body. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's just, I mean, you might want. I don't know if you put this in as like a utility card or if you try to build a combo deck with it. That's kind of where I'm, the two sides that I'm kind of which I'm stuck between.
Yeah, and if it ever gets devolved, that's a really bad scenario for you. Or hexed, or polymorphed.
Yeah, or
It's
silenced even. I mean,
yeah, or even just silenced. Yeah, you're right.
yeah, any silence or transform effect, obviously, make it that much worse.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm not really that sold on Carnivorous Cube, but we're gonna have to wait and see exactly what the rest of the set entails to see whether it's actually going to be any good or not. So one of the other things we did cover whilst you were away was the recruit cards, Guild Recruiter and Gather Your Party. So I don't know if you want to give a short your thoughts on either one of those cards or just on recruit in general. What do you think of the mechanic?
It's an interesting mechanic. I mean, basically, it's kind of, I mean, in a way, Barnes was basically the first card that recruited, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Although, from what I've read about recruit, it actually puts the deck into play.
Yes, it's not a copy of it,
It's not a copy,
and
so
it's
it's a little
not
different to Barnes in
it's
that
not a
regard.
1/1 version of it like
Yeah,
Barnes.
you literally
So
put the minion.
yeah, I was comparing, let's say, Gather Your Party to Shadow Essence, for example. Um,
Yeah.
do you think big warrior is going to be a thing with Gather Your Party?
I don't know because all of a sudden now, I mean, and like the developers will say, you have to kind of look at the way your deck is built, and now debate. Is it worth all of a sudden not putting in Armor Smith or Acolytes of Pain, just so you have that high roll potential of Ysera and Grom and whatnot? And I mean, if you look at the pattern one is an interesting one because it specifically says recruit a minion that costs 4 less.
It's actually just neutral. It's not paladin. Guild
Is that a
Recruiter.
neutral? I thought
Yeah.
it was paladin. For some
No,
reason, I thought
Guild
it was
Recruiter
paladin.
is neutral.
Oh, so the problem with that is now you're kind of stuck with do you not put any 1, 2, or 3 cost minions to
Yeah.
ensure that you're only rolling 4 cost minions?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of went through a lot of the 4 mana cost minions. I mean, the biggest high roll that we pointed out was Flame Wreath Faceless. But yeah.
Well, you're dead. Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 4 mana 7/7. Good meme. 5 mana 9/11. Whoa, 9/11 confirmed.
Oh. So yeah, but the thing is, obviously, the problem is then you're literally not running anything that costs less than because the problem is, do you really want to run one cost and then 5 mana 2/4? Let's say you get a 2/2, 5 mana 4/6 still not amazing.
Basically, what I was saying is it's kind of once Doppelgangster rotates out, it's a new Doppelgangster effect for Evolve Shaman.
But Evolve's also rotating out, so
Is Evolve rotating at the same time? I mean, there's still Thrall, but
yeah, I mean, Evolve, if I remember correctly, is from Whispers of the Old Gods.
Is it also Whispers of the Old Gods?
Yeah, so therefore it will rotate the same. So it's a case of.
Okay, right.
So the only way you're going to do it is with Thrall, really.
Yeah, maybe they're trying to keep that kind of Thrall-based deck alive, but I'm not sure about that one.
I'm not sold.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely some good options for recruits, but I think we're going to have to see a lot of the other recruit cards. Okay, so the one thing I did save for discussing with you is the new Elixir cards. This is the other kind of new mechanic kind of thing we're seeing. And the example we have here is the Priest spell Unidentified Elixir. I think these are unidentified cards more than elixirs. So we have the unidentified elixir. It's a 3 mana priest spell, and it reads: give a minion +2/+2, and gain a bonus effect in your hand. So the way these cards are going to work, I believe, is when you draw them, basically that randomizes the bonus effect. So it could be something like Lifesteal, Divine Shield, something like that. So the unidentified elixir, you'll know what it is when you draw it, but when you're putting it in your deck, it is in fact unidentified. What are your thoughts on this card, first of all, before we discuss the mechanic as a whole?
Well, I mean, the there's four different elections you can get. The four, and they all obviously got interesting.
Oh, okay. So yeah, we do know that there's
Yeah.
specifically
So the one
for
is
this.
give a. So obviously, all of them give a minion +2/+2. The Elixir of Hope gives Death Rattle. Return this minion to your hand. So it obviously allows you to replay it.
Yeah.
Elixir of Life gives Life Steal. Elixir of Purity gives Divine Shield, and Elixir of Shadows summon a 1/1 copy of it. So the problem is, it's like, depending on how Priest goes, this kind of card might find its place in like a mid-range, more minion-based Priest. And for quite a while, Priest has been like, their minions are usually like, they don't have that many powerful early game minions.
Yeah. I
So it
mean,
will be interesting.
Priest does have
I mean, they have the cleric,
Radiant Elemental. I was just thinking
Radiant
Radiant
Elemental.
Elemental is pretty good if you're reducing the cost of this. This is also something to note. Any kind of mid-range priest like that's probably gonna have something like the unidentified elixir in, I
Yeah.
imagine. Um, there's all effects we generally have seen in priest, except for the divine shield part of things. Um, I mean, the death rattle returning to your hand is not normal, but like getting extra copies of minions to your hand is normal for priest if you look at like converts, but that's usually on your opponent's victim. Anyway, point is, the elixir of hope and elixir of shadows kind of seem like more build around effects, whereas elixir of life and elixir of purity are more like just general use.
Versatility.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the one thing I'm not so sold on by this is just how varied the effects are. If they were all like, let's say, closer to like adapt effects, where they're all generally just buffing up the minion, um, then they might be quite nice. But like the death rattle turning it to your hand is quite situational, and so is the summon a 1/1 copy.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna have to wait and see exactly.
If there are
Um,
any more, or if,
Yeah, I think it looks like the way I'm guessing the way this is going to work is with all the unidentified ones, they'll have a specific set individually that they will have a specific set of possibilities individually, which is going to require a lot of memorizing as to all the options.
yeah, especially competitive play, you're gonna have to go, okay, so what are the four options you could get?
Yeah, at least it's only four rather than like 12 for adapts or
Yeah.
something like that. Which is nice in the way that it also limits the RNG of it. So I like what they've done with that. But let's see the unidentified effect as a whole. What are your thoughts on this kind of the cards changing every time you draw them in a way?
This is, if I'm brutally honest, this is the kind of RNG I really don't like, because it's like, there's no way of controlling it, and it's a case of, if you randomly draw it and it gives you lifesteal at the right time, you win. Slash, it's not.
Mm,
I'm a big proponent, and I think a lot of the other competitive players are, of more controlled RNG. So like this cover mechanic is probably the best example of that, where there's still RNG involved, but a better player will make use of it better than
yeah,
a worse player. Whereas the problem is, this card, you have no way of controlling what elixir you get,
yeah.
and then, I mean, most of the times, we saw two of those are very situational, and two of them are kind of, you don't mind seeing them most of the time. So it's 50-50. Is it
Yeah,
worth a slot in your deck?
yeah.
I'm not currently sold, but I mean, we'll see, obviously, what happens.
Yeah, it's going to depend on each one of the identified cards. But at this point, I agree. I'm not really sold. The fact that it's uncontrollable RNG is not something I'm a big fan of. Obviously, you do know what it is before you play it, which is pretty important. If let's say you only identified it as you played it, I would be straight up no on it. But for now, it might still have use in certain decks.
Yeah, because you know what can happen, though. Like, the possibilities at least, or
Yeah. And then we have some Cobalt cards. The Cobalt Illusionist, which is a rogue minion, 4 mana, 3/3. common minion, and it reads Death Rattle. Summon a 1/1 copy of a minion from your hand.
Ugh.
So, I mean, I was thinking about this. I was like, what's the best thing you can get? Probably, um,
Malygos.
yeah, Malagos is definitely something. I was actually more thinking of the plant. Now I forgot its name entirely, which is terrible.
Sherzin.
Sherazin, yes.
Yes.
Sherazin's pretty good because when it dies, it'll come back as a 5/3. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Sherzin, I mean, Gadgetzan. I mean, the problem though is because for me, the problem I have with this card is because it's a death rattle.
yep.
You first of all, you're not controlling it.
Yeah.
A 4-mana 3/3 is pretty meh. And
Yeah.
I mean, currently Rogue is running a lot of the most popular Rogue decks, or are all running relatively early game because you kind of need the early game to not die. So
Sure.
you
This
need
is
SR7
this is definitely
agent.
not a tempo rogue card.
No, this is a much slower deck. And the problem is if you want to I don't know. I'm not sold on this card at all. I mean, even in a crazy combo deck, the problem is you can't control it reliably enough.
You can
You know.
backstab it and somehow deal one more damage to it, and then get your
Uh,
Malagos out, and then combo Malagos for lethal. It is
yeah.
possible to do it in the same turn. In fact, it would be better if it was a 3/2 for that scenario, so that you didn't
Yeah.
have to do extra work to kill it. But yeah, I think that is the largest problem with it, is that the death rattle effect is during your opponent's turn. Um,
I mean,
most of the
unless the
time,
death battle has
if
good
they're
value.
ahead. So like, yeah, I mean, in a deck that has stuff like cards like Cairn, obviously that's a nuts another
Yeah,
high
other death
roll
rattles are
for
pretty
Cobalt
decent.
Illusionist. So maybe if they are trying to go for some kind of Death Rattle Rogue, I mean, we've seen Roll the Bones, for instance, definitely looks like
Oh goodness. Yeah.
that's something they've been trying to push for actually they've been trying to push for a long time. If we look back to like Unearthed Raptor as well.
Death Rattle Rogue they might be trying to push it again.
Yeah.
Uh, so I mean,
It
we'll see.
it could
I'm
work in
currently
a Jade Rogue kind of thing. I mean, Jade Swarmer, it's pretty good, but you've probably played your Jade Swarmers before you play your Cobalt Illusionist
yeah.
anyway.
I mean, getting something like Aya is obviously pretty good, or
Yeah.
but I mean, I can't. I currently don't see it. I mean, there's
No.
probably just better cards to play in its spots, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those cards that is
People
good in
team with
very
it.
specific decks, but I'm not sure it's going to be able to push an archetype by itself. So it's going to
Yeah.
need those other archetypes to be powerful enough. So yeah, I'm not so sold on it for now. But rogue cards are always probably the hardest to uh, sort of analyze beforehand. So we're going to have to wait and see exactly what the rogue package is for the set. Next we have the Drygalt Jailer. This is a Paladin minion. 2 mana 1/1. It's common and it reads Death Rattle. Add 3 Silverhand Recruits to your hand. So Silverhand Recruits, they're the minions you get from your hero power, except they do only cost 1. So it means you're going to be able to play these Silverhand Recruits for 1. What are your thoughts on a 2 mana 1/1 that gives you 3 1/1 for 1?
Like my first thought, it's one of those cards. I'm like, 2 mana 1/1. I mean, obviously the kind of synergies you can get from it are obviously the hand buff synergies that they try pushing Paladin. I mean, that's obviously sort of the first thing. The other thing is with because you can actually summon them, it will trigger cards like your Hobgoblin or your
Yeah.
some of your
Steward of Darkshire.
well, Steward of Darkshire triggers with your hero power anyway. I think, if I'm correct.
Sure, sure. You mean
But yeah, it would,
play
you know,
them
you
rather
can
than summon
it
them,
counts
yeah.
as playing more minions. So I mean, I don't know if Knife Juggler finds its way back into Paladin decks again.
Well,
You
Knife
kind
Juggler
of
triggers off your hero power too. But
yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
I get what you mean. You
Like
can
the
do
fact
more
is
in one turn because they're costing 1 rather than costing
yeah. So
2.
I mean,
So
this
with
might be
all of
the
those
token
cards.
deck, a token hand buff deck. I don't know. I don't suppose we're the like code archetypes. I don't currently see it fits in there really. I mean,
So
if you're a slow deck,
if
you don't
we
really want this.
if we ignored the first part of this, the body, right? The 2 mana
Yeah,
1/1
yeah.
Death
It's
Rattle.
basically your
If
hero
you
power.
ignore that and you think of it as 3 mana for 3 recruits, would you play that?
Oh, it's
I mean, we've
3
got
mana for.
Lost in the
It's
Jungle, which is 1 mana for 2 recruits.
yeah.
Is the
You
one
basically
extra recruit worth that much more?
well, I mean, basically, it's just I think it's well. I mean, it's basically it's obviously a worse version of Masterful Battle, right? You
Sure.
don't get the weapon. The fact
And
that
the
you can
recruits on
still,
the board.
yeah, but the fact that you can still play them, that's kind of going to be the key, I think. It's going to be if the synergies, the hand buff synergies are powerful enough for it to be in a deck. Like that's the only real redeeming qualities of it. It's the fact that you then play them so they can give buffs, they can get buffs or a value somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real test is going to be whether they print enough cards with Silverhand Recruit synergy.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
I
the
suppose,
interesting
yeah.
thing. I mean, we have the
Stick it
Light
on.
Fuse Stegodon at the moment, yeah.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's not that many cards other than like Sunkeeper Tarium that just happens to synergize with them because they're small minions and you can buff them up. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if we get enough cards that synergize with recruits, especially recruits entering the battlefield,
Yeah.
then maybe something like this could be possible. But there's definitely a card that goes in that deck rather than a card that makes that deck. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to wait and see on Dry Gulch Jailer. And then finally, the last card we have to discuss is Rin, the First Disciple. So this is the Warlock Legendary minion for the set. I'm sure there'll only be one if there's the quest. I mean the
Weapon.
weapons, yeah. So Rin, the First Disciple, is a 6 mana 3/6 with Taunt and Death Rattle. Add the first seal to your hand. So um, the seals work like this. They each cost 5 mana, and as you play each seal, you get access to the next one. So
And you get a bigger demon.
yeah, so the first seal is 5 mana, summon a 2/2 demon, add the second seal to your hand. Then the second seal is 5 mana, summon a 3/3 demon, add the third seal to your hand. Third seal, 4/4 demon, fifth seal, 5/5 demon, and the fifth seal gives you the final seal. And the final seal is summoning a 6/6 demon and add a Azari, Azari? Yeah, Azari the
Azari.
Devourer to your hand. So Azari the Devourer is a 10 mana, 10/10 demon that has Battle Cry, destroy your opponent's deck. I know what you're saying, what you're thinking. Yay, I can finally beat Jade Druid with my Control Warlock, right? That's exactly what you're thinking right now.
Yeah, the problem is, as people have already pointed out, the fact that you need to invest like 31 mana into this.
Yeah. I
is
think
kind
these
of the
seals being 5 mana is quite silly. I mean, if you just think like if you play this as fast as you could, right? So you play Rin the first turn. I mean, assuming we don't have a coin and we can't coin the first seal. So we play Rin. The next turn we play the first seal and the second seal. Now you just spend 10 mana to summon a 2/2 and a 3/3. Well, that's a bad turn. Let's hope we don't die. So next turn we play the third seal and the fourth seal. Okay, we summoned a 4/4 and a 5/5. But our opponent must be ahead on the board now. We just gave them a turn where we just summoned 5 stats for 10 mana. And then the third turn only, we're going to summon the final seal, which is the 6/6, and we get Azari. And then it takes another turn to play Azari, right? So
Yeah.
that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 turns. Or on the fifth turn, we can play Azari.
And even then, the problem is if you did on board, you did on board. It doesn't, I mean, the battle cry kills the deck. It doesn't kill, if they've got minions in play,
Yeah.
you still probably just be. So the problem is, this will only ever see play in a potentially like a very slow fatigue orientated control warlock deck. A deck that's absolutely trying to grind them, and then late game when you got nothing to do, you'll play a seal. And the body's largely irrelevant. You're basically just using it as a, it's a slow.
Something to
eventual
do on a turn when you would be floating mana. That's
Exactly.
pretty much the only way it's
Like
any
turn
good,
15,
right?
you're playing this. In turn 16 or turn 17, you might play the other one because you need to do something else. It's the kind of filler. When you've got
Yeah.
nothing better to do in your turn.
Well,
and you hope
at least
you're
it
not died.
follows one tradition of making bad warlock cards, so that's nice. I
Yeah.
must say I do like the Fell Hunters though, the demons that you get. They look pretty cool because they like upgrade as they go. It's like the same card but just getting more and more scary. So
Yes, and
that's a nice
the picture
effect, a nice
changes,
touch.
Yeah, that's a nice touch. And even the seal, the artwork for the seals, like you'll see that it gets more complicated with like different circles and patterns and things. So I mean,
Yeah.
in that regard, it's quite cool. But
I like the idea of this multi-phased card, But when all the seals are costing 5 mana, I am saying no thank you. Especially, even Rin itself is not particularly impressive as a 6 mana 3/6, right? It does have Taunt, but also that's the thing.
Uh,
Rin actually has to die for you to get the first seal, right? So if you
oh,
play
you
Rin on
get
the
that
first turn,
though.
yeah, if you play Rin
It's
on
the
the first
first.
turn, it could be an
Oh,
extra turn if Rin doesn't die.
oh
So
shit.
also you can steal Rin and your opponent gets the seals. Let's say like mind
Oh, the
control,
Death
something
Tunnel.
silly
I thought it
like
was a
that.
battle
You can
cry.
silence Rin, you can polymorph it, and then all the seals are gone.
So like yeah, like the problem is not a super reliable win condition at least. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like
On
let's
the
not
bright
lie. You
side,
know,
you can bring it back with Nzoth.
now now 10 times you probably still would rather play something like Jiraxis, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Jiraxis
you
just seems 100 times better. Or Blood Reaver Gul'dan.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like between Jiraxis and Don't Evil go down, those and I mean once again, you know, there's going to be a trolled video of the first person who pulls this off successfully. It's going to be hilarious, but like
Yeah, some Rock Lee stuff, but yeah, I'm not sold on Rin. I really like the design. I think it's a cool design. It's just a cool enough design that it'll never see play,
yeah.
probably. It's gonna
Uh,
take some incredible support for this card to see play. That's what I have to say now. Or an
yeah.
incredibly weird meta.
Oh yeah, a very weird meta of super slow, like like
Just
slower than
Jade Druids.
no,
Like,
but even then, you're probably still dead.
yeah, you
Like
probably
the
do
thing is,
though, but
you probably still died to the problem is you're probably still dying to the horde of Jades. Like this is a super slow dead man's beating dead if dead man's
okay.
hand warrior becomes the meta dominator somehow this might be the deck.
I got it. I've got it. In the dual class arenas, if you have this and you have either enough sources apprentices, enough radiant elementals, or enough preparations, you can play your seals pretty quickly.
Jeez, like yeah, but the arenas the dual
I'm
arenas
just
ended
saying,
today,
it's
so
I
yeah,
know
they
for
bring it
the
back.
next time they do it, the dream that's the new dream, right?
Yeah, because
That's
in
the
Warlock,
dream to go
there's
for
no
in your
ways of
build.
reducing it in Warlock. That's the problem
Yeah,
as well.
exactly.
I mean, okay, I mean, so even in Fairy Tale
Anyway,
World, you play this in Wild, right? And then you get like with Emperor, oh no, even then, wait, you only get one at a time, so
yeah,
even then it doesn't
exactly.
help. Emperor doesn't even help that much.
No, you need to be able to play them all in one turn. So you need to get your like 5 Sorcerer's Apprentices or something.
In one of the Tavern Brawls where you can start with 10 mana, this might be a thing, right?
Yeah, maybe it's a Tavern Brawl card.
It's Tavern Brawl, like, it's bad, but it might be a Tavern Brawl card.
Yeah, I mean, as a 1 mana 1/1, it might be okay, right? In
Yeah,
that Tavern Brawl.
yeah, but even then, you still have to wait 5 mana. Like, the problem is you still have to wait till turn 5 to play it, though.
And all the things that you summon are going to be 1/1s as well. Never mind, I don't think it's good in that Tavern Brawl.
But, like, there are some random Tavern Brawls that it might be.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, but overall impression, we're not so sold on Rin.
It's a cool design. It's a really cool card. Just not very good, I don't think.
Yeah, but anyway, that's all for the new cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is quite a long one because there's a lot of stuff to go through, and there's still more to go through. One of the other things that they're doing, and this is something I think that's really, really cool, is they are adding some arena-specific cards. This is a really cool thing I think they're doing to kind of make the arena a lot more innovative. What they did is they had 3 cards for each class, and they had people vote on them in order to determine which of the cards went through. So,
Bad move.
well, yeah, you weren't so happy with some of the voting, but
Some of them, when I looked at that, because there's videos showing the other choices, and then when you see some of the other choices, and then what people chose,
yeah.
I was quite disappointed.
Yeah, well, we can have a look at some of those options and what people chose now. So, first of all, just talking about the idea. So, this is just going to be cards that are added to the like pickable cards from the arena,
Yeah, only arena
and
cards.
yeah, and I think this is a super cool thing that they're doing. They're not collectible cards. There's no way you can like get them in your collection. So they can make them very interesting, specific arena cards. And I think it's something that's going to make the arena really unique. And also, it's just really cool that they're showing some very specific love to the arena in this case. So yeah. So looking at the first cards we have here for Hunter, we have Reload, Volley, and Deadeye. Reload is 2 mana, discard your hand, draw 3 cards. Screams aggressive card. We have Volley. 4 mana, add 3 random shot spells to your hand. So I think these would be things like Deadly Shot, Explosive Shot, um, those kind of cards. And then we have Deadeye, which is the one that actually got chosen. It's a 2 mana spell that reads for the rest of the game, your hero power can also target minions. So this is unlocking those kind of more control-oriented hunters in Arena, which is going to be a much more interesting way to build Hunter in Arena. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy that Deadeye won here. I think Reload would have just screamed, everyone builds aggressive hunters and hopes to get Reload.
I would like Volley. Like
Really?
I'm a
No,
fan of the value.
no,
Like
but the shot spells suck, and you
no,
do
multi-shot's good
nothing.
in Arena. Deadly shot's pretty good. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't know. I'm trying to work.
I'm not
Explosive shots
sold.
is pretty good.
Yeah,
All
but
of them,
4 mana
all of
do
them are actually quite
nothing.
good. Sorry.
4 mana do nothing is something
Yeah,
I'm not
obviously.
happy with.
I mean, it's basically like a kind of a Kabbalah's tomb for Hunter in a way.
Yeah, I suppose a much more limited one.
Yeah.
Anyway, Deadeye is the one that actually won, and
Yeah.
I think it could open up some interesting drafting for Hunter. And then next we have the mage cards. We have Arcane Flux, 2 mana, cast a random mage spell, draw a card. Targets chosen randomly for the spell. Very glad that one did not win. Then we have one of the things which I'm very glad this one won, and it's super interesting. We have Polymorph, question mark, question mark, question mark. It's 5 mana, and it reads choose a minion, discover a new minion to transform it into. So that means you can just choose your own minions, you can choose your opponent's minions, you can hope to make it smaller, you can hope to make it bigger. I think it's going to lead to some really high roll arenas, but it's going to be pretty interesting. I think it's a really cool card.
It's a cool design, but it's going to end some awkward games where, you know, like, let's say you want to transform your opponent's minion and all the options are
Lich King,
massive.
Ysera,
Yeah,
and
or it's going to be
I don't know,
awkward when you want to change your small minion and also, all of them are really weak and all have awkward, effects or whatever, So
yeah,
it makes it's a very interesting mechanic.
I think on average it's definitely something that's going to be better used on smaller minions because it's much easier to get bigger than it is to
Yeah.
get smaller. But yeah,
But you really want to pay 5 minutes to turn your 1/1 into like a 3/3.
yeah, no. Obviously, you want to be getting at least like 5/5 worth of stats here. Let's say.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have Power Cosmic, which is 1 mana, discover a legendary minion. Discovering's cool. We all like discovering, but
It would be very strong, I
legendaries.
think. I think it would actually been quite strong in Arena because of the Discover.
Yeah, I suppose it's pretty good. It would have been pretty good in arena, but
Arcane
I
Flux.
like polymorph question mark question mark question
I'm
mark.
glad Arcane Flux purely because of like the clown fiestas of 2 mana Pyroblast,
Yeah,
or 2 mana Flame
2
Strike,
mana pyroblast yourself.
or 2 mana Flame Strike is not. I mean, like
Yeah,
there's some high roll potential. 2 mana, there's a lot of pretty good mage spells. 2 mana Arcane. I mean, and it would be so tilting to lose this card in arena as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then next we have the warrior weapons. We have Training Blade, which is a 1 mana 1/3 with Death Rattle, add a random weapon to your hand. Not a fan of because the random Death Rattle kind of effect. I don't like that. Then we have Axe of the Eclipse, a 5 mana 4/2 that reads Battle Cry, destroy all damaged minions. Would have been a really huge swing potential card to play around. Obviously, pretty nuts with something like Whirlwind that you can combo
Or
that same turn.
Blood Razor into
Uh,
this.
yeah, that's true because it'll destroy the Blood Razor. And then we have the one that actually won, which is Blazing Longsword, a 3 mana 2/3 weapon that reads also damage the minions next to whomever you attack.
That's
So
pretty good.
it's a really good effect, and it's really, really interesting. It's going to lead to some cool positioning that's going to be required against
Yeah.
warriors. So yeah, I like Blazing Sword or Blazing Longsword. I'm pretty
So I
happy.
think it's a very powerful card. I mean, basically, I think you would take this, but almost most of the times over Fireworks.
Yeah, it definitely looks better than Fireworks. Okay, next on to the Paladin cards. There were Retribution, Relic of Hope, and Hand of Salvation. Retribution is a 1 mana secret, and it reads when an enemy attacks your hero, deal 4 damage to it, which is pretty cool. I actually really like that design.
Yeah, I like that one as well.
I wouldn't mind that as a normal card. And then we have Relic of Hope. When you draw this, transform it into a random Paladin spell.
Yeah,
which
no.
no, I'm not a fan of. Uh, put a random paladin spell in your deck is just worse than picking a card in arena, so no thank you. I don't think you would
And,
draft this
and
very
there's a
often.
lot of bad paladin spells as well.
Yeah. And then we have Hand of Salvation. So this is the one that actually won. And it's a secret as well. So it's 1 mana. And when your second minion dies in a turn, revive it.
That's
So
gonna be
it's
weird though.
interesting ones play around in the sense that Redemption affects the first minion that dies, Hand of Salvation affects the second. So you're going to have to kill at least 2 minions before you can kind of cross both these secrets off the possible secrets list. So
And from what it sounds like, it comes back at full stats basically because it
yes,
says revive. It
yeah,
will come back full. So yeah, it's going to make for quite interesting sequencing. You know, to play against the. It would have made. Oh no, because I think that's the one that won. So it will
yeah,
make it will make quite interesting. You know, paladin to play around.
yeah.
Play around against the paladin. I mean.
Yeah, so pretty interesting card. Then we have the Priest spells. We have Absolution, a 1 mana spell, give a minion +1/+1 and lifesteal. It's pretty sort of standard effect, I think. We
Hmm.
have Mass Resurrection, which honestly just reminds me of pre-nerf or pre-change Mercy from Overwatch. So there's a 5 mana spell, give your minions death rattle, resummon this minion. Which is really powerful for a priest if you're ahead on the board. It's like a big kind of win more card, or
Yeah,
I don't know,
well, in
like it
arena,
kind of just
yeah,
wins you the game a
it's a
lot
big
of the
swing.
time. Like it just affirms any board position you have. It would have been really powerful. But Generous Spirit is the one that won. This is a 3 mana spell. Give a friendly minion to your opponent. Draw 3 cards. So pretty good for. It's kind of epitomizes the trade up of value for. Or sorry, card advantage for tempo. You're giving your opponent tempo by giving them a minion, assuming that you don't manage to give them something like Doomsayer, and you're drawing 3 cards. So you're getting card advantage, but you're giving up board, and largely. So yeah, I'm not so sold on Generous Spirit. I mean, there's obviously some very specific scenarios it could be good in, but this is Arena where you don't really get to put together those specific scenarios. So I'm not so sold on Generous Spirit. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, all of the options. I mean, Mass Resurrection would probably be the best. Generous, it's like Church. It's kind of, is it, I mean, obviously you're gonna try and give your opponent like a 1/1 or something really weak, and then obviously if you can get that right, then obviously it's pretty good. I mean, draw 3 cards for 3 mana is obviously, it's arcane. It's just better than arcane
Intellect.
intellect.
Hmm.
But it's is an extra card worth versus the friendly money you're giving, right?
Yeah.
And it seems like you probably won't be able to play this unless you have a friendly minion.
Yeah.
So you won't be able to just try and play it when you don't have a friendly minion, just to try and get around that.
Yeah, which would be pretty powerful if you could.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving on to the rogue cards, we have Assassin's Training, a 1 mana spell, give a minion poisonous. So would have been pretty good way to just like trade up, which would have been pretty powerful. Then we have Smoke Bomb. This is the one that actually won. Give a minion stealth. That's the 1 mana spell. Give a minion stealth until your next turn. Draw a card. So singular target conceal that also draws you a card. When I first saw this, I thought it was a standard card, and I was like, okay, they're gonna rotate Gadgets and Auctioneer because there's no way they would have this and Gadgets and Auctioneer in the same when they just got rid of Conceal for a similar reason in a way. Like, but yeah, in Arena, Miracle Rogue is not as much of a thing, but
Probably.
Smoke Bomb still, I think, a pretty good card, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's 1 mana cycle. Worst case, I mean, if you draw it, I mean, would you? I mean, most rogue would probably just play 1 mana to draw a card without even the give your minion a stealth. To be honest, I mean, it's
I don't know about that, but like I think if you look at it this way, let's say you value trade, then you give that minion stealth, and then even if it's on a low health and would have died to another smaller minion on the board, you can then trade it up or trade it evenly on the second time. I think that's one of the general good use cases of smoke bomb that's really good. Um, yeah, so smoke bomb pretty good, and then we have the reason Blade Flurry died. Jokes. We have Mind Spike. As is traditional for rogues, it's a 4 mana weapon, and it has 1 attack, but this time it has 3 durability, which is 1 less than Poison Blade, which is the horrible rogue weapon I'm referencing here. Yeah, so Mind Spike, whenever you kill a minion with this, draw a card. So it's like paying double for your hero power in a way, but you're actually getting card advantage when you kill minions with it. I think it's difficult in a sense to be guaranteeing that you're actually going to kill minions with it. So I think it's you
Yeah.
can't look at this as 4 mana draw 3 cards because first of all it's going to cost you a bunch of life to do that, which is not something that is a abundant resource as a rogue.
And also
And
awkward trades, probably.
yeah, it is. It's going to require some awkward trades. So
Unless
overall,
you
I think
can't,
Smoke Bomb definitely the most powerful of the ones.
if
I'm
you
glad it
combo
won.
this with Envenom, maybe, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's obviously the silly synergy there, but it doesn't matter. Mind Spike did not win. Maybe we could
Yeah,
see some of these cards in Arena in the future, though, just because they
yeah.
didn't win this time. I mean, they went through all this effort of making these cards. I'm sure we're gonna see them come back at some point.
Yep.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Next, we have the Shaman cards. Refreshing Jolt is a 3 mana spell that deals 4 damage to an enemy or restore 8 health to a friendly character. I saw this, I was like, okay, that's pretty good. Jade Lightning's not bad. I mean, you don't get a Jade with this, so it's not as much tempo. But 3 mana to deal 4 damage to an enemy
It's
is pretty
very strong.
strong. And then giving you the alternative option as well, restoring 8 health to a friendly character is really versatile spell. But
I think all of the Shaman ones are actually pretty good.
yeah, but Refreshing Jolt did not win,
Yeah.
and neither did Magma Shock, which is a
Which
4 mana
Earthshock,
spell that
basically.
deals 4 damage to a minion and silences it and then deals 4 damage to it. So basically, Earth Shock times 4.
Yeah.
So yeah, would have been pretty good in Arena. I think it's just a pretty good card removal and also silences to remove buffs and stuff. And then we have the one that actually won, Crackling Doom, which is a 0 mana spell. Yes, 0 mana spell that deals 12 damage to all minions. But that's not quite the end. It also has Overload 10. So it's 0 mana, but the next turn you're not playing anything either, unless you have another Crackling Doom. And this is Arena, so you can have more copies. So we could play Crackling Doom into Crackling Doom into Crackling Doom and do nothing. But obviously, the crazy scenario when I first saw this as well, and before I realized these were Arena cards, was the Crackling Doom into Snow Fury Giants kind of
Yeah.
synergy. And that's still something you can possibly pull off in Arena. But obviously, with the offering bonuses going away to the Knights of the Frozen Throne cards, it's not going to be quite as prevalent. So yeah, Crackling Doom. It's still pretty good though. It's like resetting the board. And the important thing is you can play Crackling Doom and then play your minions for that turn. And then skipping your next turn doesn't feel quite as much of a disadvantage, you know. In a
Yeah.
way, if you consider it's similar to Twisting Nether, just in the sense that you get to develop first into the Twisting Nether rather than your opponent develops first and then you develop afterwards. Like I think that's kind of the most
Actually, this is probably
close
better because
consideration.
you
Yes, it
usually play
is.
Twisty Nether and then you play a 2-drop. Whereas this, you do this for 0, then develop.
Yes, yes,
Like
yes.
you
I'm
have,
saying
yeah,
this is similar to, but I agree it's better because
yeah,
you will have the initiative with all the minions on the board, and that's the
yeah,
important part.
yeah. Those are pretty good
So
things.
it's definitely something you're gonna have to play around and not develop or not commit too heavily to board against shamans, especially if they're holding back a bunch of cards and then they're crackling doom and develop a board, and that's quite scary. Um, and then we have the druid cards. Um, the second last of our set of cards. We have Thorn Strike, a 2 mana druid spell that choose one, deal 2 damage to a minion or 1 damage to all enemy minions. So much like a Maelstrom Portal in a way, except it has, instead of giving you a minion, it has an alternative to deal 2 damage to a minion.
I
I
really
know
like that card.
you're a really big fan of this. I think it would have been pretty powerful for druids. I think it's honestly would have been. I mean, you can probably say this for a lot of the cards, but probably would have been a lot better in constructed than it would have been in arena.
Yeah,
That's why they
definitely.
can't really print it in constructed. Um, and yeah, it didn't win though, so we're just gonna move on. Next there's Boon of Elune, which is just a fun spell to say. Boon of Elune is just fun to say. Uh, it's 5 mana and add 4 Moonfires to your hand. So that's really cool because 4 Moonfires is fun, but it's 5 mana deal 4 damage, split as you choose basically. If you think about
If you
it.
drop Malagos in Arena, this would be great, right?
Sure. Yeah. That's 20 damage. That's still not even lethal. No, it's 24 damage. Sorry. But yeah, Boon of Elune, other than having a great name, Not particularly exciting, and also didn't get picked, thankfully. Then we have Nature's Champion, the one that did get chosen now by process of elimination. You might have figured that one out. It's 3 mana, return a friendly minion to your hand, and give it +5/+5. So I kind of see this as a way of basically just saving a minion that can value trade, Nature's Champion, and then maybe play the minion again, or if you do it on a cheap minion, that is. Or more likely, it's going to be an expensive minion you can maybe play in like the next turn or something. So it's a way of basically getting more value out of your resources as a druid.
Yeah,
But it is obviously a big tempo disadvantage. In
because
the
you're
sense that
removing
you
it.
do have to return the minion to your hand. But you then get a big tempo advantage when you play it again with that +5/+5 stats. So I think Nature's Champion is going to lead to some interesting plays, and I'm actually pretty glad it got chosen over Thornstrike because I think honestly Thornstrike is just a lot more simple to play around and play with than Nature's Champion, and Nature's Champion I think will probably reward the better arena players than myself higher or more often. And then finally, we have the Warlock cards. We have Bottled Madness. This is the card that actually managed to win, which is a 0 mana cost spell. Transform each card in your hand into a random demon. Now, I haven't quite looked at the stats for demons, but this doesn't feel nice because I don't like transforming cards in my hand into random cards, especially in arena format where you draft the cards, so they should always be better than random cards. But
Yeah,
maybe this pulls you out of things in some scenarios because it does cost 0 mana. So maybe late in the game it can turn your weak cards into,
big things.
abyssal enforcers and things like that, so maybe it has something, but most of the time I don't think you're necessarily going to want to draft this in arena because it's also you're using a card, even though it's 0 mana, you're still using a card to transform the rest of your cards into random demons. That's not
Yeah.
something I'm happy with. I'd rather just pick a good demon if possible. Okay, next we have From Beyond. 1 mana spell, draw 3 cards at the end of your turn, discard them. I really like this one, to be honest. It's like 1 mana, and if you can play all the 3 cards, there's no disadvantage to it.
Yeah.
Or if you don't want, let's say you draw something like a Silverware Golem, then you don't even have to play it and you'll discard it. So you kind of have those choices. I really liked it. A cheap spell that does that and then allows you to play things. It also allows you to fish for lethal. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Or just like, yeah, just catching up basically.
I like From Beyond. I think it would be a pretty interesting card. Probably too good again for constructed, but would have been a really interesting card to see. And then next we have Combust. This is the one that definitely looked like the strongest on paper. It's 6 mana, and it reads Destroy a minion, deal 3 damage to all other characters. So basically, think of it as Siphon Soul without the heal, plus a Hellfire. So you're destroying a minion, you're making it blow up and deal 3 damage to all other characters. Sorry.
This would
So
have been crazy good, I think.
yeah, Combust would have been really nuts. And I'm actually kind of glad it didn't win because I think it's a little bit too powerful. I personally would have liked From Beyond to win, yeah, because I
Yeah.
think it would have been the most interesting to play. But Combust, yeah, that would have been pretty nuts. And if that does ever see some play in Arena, Warlock's going to be pretty scary then. But yeah, so those are all the cards. And mostly I just think this whole idea is really, really interesting, and it's something I'm really glad they did. Maybe it'll even get me um, interested in Arena again. But yeah, I mean, this episode has gone on quite long. The last thing is we can give a quick mention to was the Hearthstone Invitational. I'd implore everyone to go watch it if they didn't already watch it from BlizzCon over the weekend. It was really fun. It wasn't like the highest level competitive kind of Hearthstone. It was enjoyable for all kind of audiences. So I would definitely implore everyone to go and watch it. Maybe we'll discuss it a little bit more next week. But the final in particular, I think, was a really, really great one to watch. And it was quite an interesting format seeing everyone play. So I think I'm gonna save any kind of spoilers.
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil it for everyone, and, now that I just told you to go watch it. So go ahead and watch that Hearthstone Invitational. Obviously, there was a lot to watch from BlizzCon, especially with all the esports and all the other games. So you might not have had time to watch it. So go watch it this week, and maybe we'll be able to talk about it next week on episode 37 of Magma Rages. But This was a very long episode, as we can kind of expect after BlizzCon,
Yep.
all this hype. So thanks a lot for sticking with us all this time, even through me having to solo the episode for a while when Pandemonia disappeared. But yeah, thanks a lot, and thanks as well for joining me as always, Pandemonia. You
Cheers.
can find us. Well, I gotta plug us first. You can find us on Twitter if you want to ask us any questions about the cards or anything else. Give us any feedback. You can find Pandemonia at PandemoniaZA. That's with a 3 and a 0 for the E and the O, respectively. And you can find myself at dib_gaming on Twitter. And you can also just leave us any comments in the comments section on YouTube. And please also like, subscribe, follow, do all those kind of things to help the channel grow and let us know any kind of feedback you have from these episodes. So thanks a lot, everyone.
Cheers.
From us, cheerio.